Oh, I'm gonna film someone use
Here, they might probably a little small. Edge, turn around.
That's perfect. He looks good.
The morning of September 11th was, you know, a nice, calm, sunny, few aesthetic clouds in the sky, peaceful, everybody going about their business, and that was the same as it was for Pearl Harbor. The day that Pearl Harbor was, it was very peaceful and calm, and everybody was just going about their business, and nobody expected it, and all of a sudden you have this big incident, this tragedy that happens in the midst of normal life.
Well, it started out as a normal day. I came to school.
Got up, went to work. I got to work about 8:30.
I was sitting in my office, and you know, it was like every other day.
We actually got an alarm at the firehouse at about 8:30. And on the way back from the alarm, the dispatcher called us on the radio and told us to put the TV on when you go back because you're not going to believe what you see.
One of the towers of the World Trade Center was on fire. Thinking that it might have been just some small plane that went astray by accident.
We thought it was maybe a little Cessna or something rather like that. And as we were watching it,
We actually witnessed the plane going into the second building.
I think it was pretty obvious that there's something more than just an accident going on. I felt that there was some kind of a plot to take the building down. And then subsequently the building
Collapsed, and it was almost beyond belief.
Actually, during breakfast time, I looked out the window because I could see the Trade Center from my house, because I live across from the Staten Island on the Raritan Bay. I looked out at the towers, and I was thinking how amazing they were, how long it took to build them, just typical questions about big buildings you would think to yourself. And not realizing that in a couple of hours they'd be falling, killing thousands.
I remember coming out of the subway tunnel. I take the train, actually, every day, more or less. And I take from Penn Station to where I work, 19th Broadway, I take the end of the R. When I came out of the subway, that's Union Square. When I came out of Union Square, I couldn't understand why there were so many people gathered around. First thing I thought was, oh, street performer. You know, he must be pretty good if it's this many people have gathered around to watch him. And on a lark, I turned to look and see what was going on and happened to see the building's on fire.
He was sitting in the conference room, and all of a sudden he hears a bang, and he hears someone scream out the window saying the Trade Center's on fire. He ran into the other conference room and looked up, and he saw a big hole in the Trade Center with fire pouring out of it, and a huge hole.
So at that point, no one knew it was terrorist at all. I mean, everyone's like, well, you know, these things happen, until the second plane hit.
The second plane hit, and my dad heard a huge bang, and this wind came down the street, almost knocking you over from all the impact.
The first thing in the place I worked at, the vibe was, everyone was like, maybe we should get out of here, because I work in Times Square. Everyone's like, if someone's attacking New York, Times Square might be a target.
After the teachers found out, many of them had either relatives, spouses who worked in New York. In fact, my own secretary, Maureen, her twin sister worked in the World Trade Center.
My brother-in-law was in World Trade Center. I thought he was in the 29th floor. He really was the 28th floor, and he was in Tower 2. I thought he was in Tower 1. Needless to say, life froze for me at that point. I then was on the phone trying to reach my sister, whom I could not reach.
And my sister and her fiance are in the city, and I was just wanting to get in contact with her. You know, I wanted to spend time with the kids, but at the same time I wanted to be on the phone. You know, where's my sister? Is she safe?
And I got really worried because my dad works in New York.
My dad is a truck driver in New York.
I know he works only a couple blocks away from the Trade Center.
I was nervous because I know he drives like right past the World Trade Center.
He had a conference that day too, which was even closer to Trade Center. And I was just thinking, hoping that he'd be okay.
We didn't know how far these attacks would spread. We didn't know it was just centered on New York and in the Pentagon. Could have been anywhere.
Middlesex County is one of the highest, target areas for terrorists.
And that's one of the first things that went through my mind.
I was thinking about the bridges in Sayreville, the Driscoll Bridge, which is a parkway bridge, goes over the Raritan River. The Edison Bridge, Route 9 and 35, carries traffic over the river. Possibly, maybe they were a next target.
Road department blocking off entrances to some of the industries. We had some cops at Middlesex County Utilities Authority, DuPont.
Well, we have Hercules in town, which produces nitrocellulose, which is used for military ordnance.
The other area was our school buildings. That's the buildings where most of the people are generated during our day here.
The obvious concern, first of all, was would we be losing residents of Sayreville? And the particular concern was would any of our young people in the school district be losing parents or relatives, brothers or sisters, whatever.
We made a determination to call down all those folks, or those students who had parents, relatives that work in the trade center. We targeted the trade center as the area. I made the announcement on the PA.
And they called down anyone who had family at the towers, which to me was a little disturbing because they didn't tell them why.
So all the students walked in, and as they walked in, it seemed like many of them didn't know what happened at all, and I was looking at their faces, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is unreal. And it really started hitting me then. They all sat down and they all looked and were waiting for somebody to say something. Nothing came over the PA system.
No one really said to us, well, I'm going to be the one to say to the kids what happened. No one prepped us.
And as I looked around the room, I all of a sudden felt something go from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet.
A few teachers and I, it was our lunch, we went down to see if we could assist in any way. There were a couple of girls that I knew that weren't my students, but I knew from the club that were crying, and they were just very upset.
And I looked at their faces and I thought, oh my God. So I said, I don't know whether all of you know this, but the World Trade Center was hit by the airplanes, and we haven't, and I'm not doing what I'm doing now. I was much calmer. I guess maybe I was in shock at the time, and I was still looking at their faces, and I thought, oh my God, some of these children might have parents that are dead,
Students wanted to leave the building. Students were frightened, and I kept saying, no, it's not Manhattan, Washington, and Sayreville High School.
The kids started to get a little bit hysterical, so I said, okay, I'll tell you what I know so that we can stay calm.
You didn't know what was true and what wasn't. Like, you heard World Trade Center was being bombed, and Pentagon this, and plane crash in Pittsburgh, and you didn't really know what to believe because it all seemed so unrealistic. Like, we'd never encountered anything like that before in our lives.
I was real scared. Like, I was just trying to find all my friends, see if they knew anybody who was in the World Trade Center. Because, like, really, we didn't even know what was going on. I didn't even find out till fifth period, like, just from all my friends, like, different people would come up to me, like, oh, yeah, did you hear? And I was just like, no, what? So it was just, like, it was really scary because we didn't know what was going on.
They were all talking, but again, we were told not to in any way alarm them, so I really didn't have big conversations about it at that point.
My teacher told me. He goes, there was a World Trade, got bombed, the plane crashed into it, and he grabbed the radio, and he just started listening to that. He was trying to get an internet, but the internet was down.
Several students had been told by some of the teachers in the building what had occurred, and were told with inaccuracies because none of us was able to actually know what was going on.
So the bottom line is we tried to keep it quiet in the school, go about business in a normal day. In the interim, parents began to stream it.
It's very surreal. It wasn't real to me. It was like, this isn't really happening, until the phone started to ring and 1/3 of my parents started streaming into the building, very concerned, became very maternal, and said, I want to pull my children out because I want them to be close to me because I'm afraid of what's going to happen. And I really couldn't blame him for doing that.
It was just real confusion, really, and nobody really knew anything until they got home. And that's when everything started coming into focus, and it was just scary that we couldn't imagine.
I guess about an hour after about 45 minutes after the first plane hit, they officially said, evacuate, get out, which I was more than ready to do anyway.
To walk out in the Union Square area, it's usually pretty traffic. I've never seen so many people on foot. With all the subways and all the cab services, all the public transportation was shut down.
So first thing I'm thinking is, how the hell am I going to get out of here? because I knew tunnels and the bridges would be closed.
They had the streets shut down, so people were walking in the middle of the streets. There were crowds gathered, hundreds and hundreds of people.
I'm right in the middle of the street, and 12th Avenue is pretty wide. I see everybody like running around into the street, so I didn't know what was going on. And I looked up, and there's a really good view of the towers there. At this point, the first tower already collapsed, but I had a really good view of the second tower going down. So I was about 20 blocks away when I saw it going down, and it was pretty surreal.
They sent bomb-sniffing dogs through, and they had firemen come through and stuff like that. So I think that was more of a show of force than anything else. They just wanted people to feel safe on the train than anything else. It was packed.
Boat ride was pretty crazy too, because you're in the on the river looking back, and you could just see all the smoke and everything and the skyline.
Me and my friend, we drove over to Lawrence Harbor, and then you could just see the smoke just across the horizon. That's really when it hit me.
What you used to be able to see were the towers behind Staten Island. You could see the end of Staten Island and the towers. And as we looked, all you could see was smoke, and the whole horizon heading south towards Sandy Hook was just all black smoke.
So I got off the boat in Weehawken, in New Jersey, and all the major roads in New Jersey were closed.
The New Jersey Turnpike being shut down, the Garden State Parkway being shut down, traffic at a standstill, etc. So it became apparent very quickly that this would have a very direct impact on the community as a whole, and also a rather immediate impact on the schools.
I was worried because everybody was going home, and I was afraid that they were just sending people home and nobody was at my house. So I was afraid that they were going to send me home and nobody was there.
Right off the bat, the first question was raised is, are we going to send students home early?
My first reaction on that one was that there's already chaos going on. There's got to be people who work in the city, with Sayreville being so close to the city. The last thing you want to do is start sending children home to empty homes.
How could you let a little one go home and not get in a house and no one be there for hours and hours?
What we did was, any student who's a walker, that is somebody who doesn't take the bus, I decided could not leave school unless we had made contact with a parent. So we began calling homes.
And what we also had to do was to devise a plan to find out about children that would go home on the bus.
And what we did in that case was made a serious departure from our normal procedure.
A staff member on every single bus, or a PTA member on every single bus, and we would actually go door to door and drop off every single child.
Any student where we could not verify that a parent was home would be delivered to the high school. We had probably 25 or 30 volunteer teachers at the high school. We made arrangements for food. Through the mayor's office and the police, we were actually set up to bring cots in if we had to have people stay overnight.
So we knew we were in a crisis situation, and we knew that we needed to stay very calm for our children and to do whatever we needed to do to make sure that we were safe in the school, that parents weren't panicked, and that we were going to really have control of the day.
It was really scary. I tell you the truth, it's the first time in my life I really could say that I was, afraid of what was going to happen. And I can imagine if I was upset and I was afraid, I can imagine how a 12-year or a 10-year-old kid or whatever age group kid or adult was feeling, because I was very concerned, very confused.
The department called up, wanted to know if be interested in going over to New York. They needed guys to go.
And I got to work as fast as I can without calling. And while I was on the road, I was beeped several times from my police desk.
I was paged out. I'm a member of New Jersey Task Force 1 as a hazmat specialist, and I was requested to respond to the Trade Center.
The call came in about 11 o'clock that Middlesex County was putting together a task force to go to gather at the fire academy. So this town sent our engine. I drove.
So it was myself and 5 other officers from town.
We ended up going to Brooklyn, or actually we went to Staten Island first. So you're going over to Verrazano and the outer bridge and looking across there and just seeing smoke.
It was just unbearable. It was just like a cloud of black billowing smoke coming out from the World Trade Center.
And we ended up at Engine Company 280 in Crown Heights in Brooklyn. And we're driving over there, and never in a million years did I ever think I'd be driving in New York City.
And it was actually complete silence on the ferry the closer we got, because everybody was just standing there at the end of the ferry boat looking at this and I guess absorbing it all in like I was, just not ever imagining that you would see something like that.
The scene is something that none of us and most people in this world have never seen before. It was devastating.
I was sitting in the emergency management office, I kept thinking about the guys and what they're going to be, you know, possibly witnessing. And I called their families.
My wife was nervous. She didn't show it too much, but I could tell, not knowing, you know, what I was going to get into, because I didn't have an answer for it.
People that were on the outskirts of everything were being able to get, they were rescued, or we pulled out dead bodies. But everything on the middle, we couldn't do anything. We just sat there while the firemen were hosing the building down.
There's a lot of frustration on not being able to, you know, do more, or you know, wish you could get into, you know, the rescue, not so much you know, searching, but not being able to find anybody that was really alive.
And knowing the word got around my whole department, the guys' names that were in there and missing.
All of a sudden, there was a knock on the door. It was our neighbor. It seems that their daughter worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, and that she was, of course, missing.
There's one company called Cantor and Fitzgerald. I believe they were on the 108th floor of one of the buildings. They lost everybody.
And they came in, they were crying, and it was devastating. We were hugging each other and crying. 27-year-old girl.
One of our family members, 22-year-old kid out of college, had everything to live for. He was following somebody out, helping an old lady down the stairs. The guy turned around and he was gone.
They said, but we know she's there somewhere and they'll find her, they're looking and they're going to find her. And we tried to, you know, console them and say, oh, definitely, and, you know, I'm sure everything will be all right.
One of the hardest things that I had to do was last night I went over to see the family because it was my first night off, and that was tough.
The memorial, it was very touching.
Some of the families are having memorials, and they're having these memorials without any bodies. There's no bodies.
Again, I cried, you know, I hugged them, I, you know, did the best I could to get through it.
I know this mother and father since I was a kid. And it was tough, and the mother was saying to me, well, do you think that he possibly can be here or there? I mean, I didn't know what to say. I mean, I felt like crying. I didn't know what to say. I knew that the father, which his name is Bobby Hughes, wouldn't ask me them questions.
One of the student council leaders had come up to me and she said, would you pray for him, Bobby Hughes? She said, you know, she's a Christian, and she said, you know, I'm a Christian and I haven't really shared my faith, and I haven't really said, you know, things to him that I feel like I wish I would have. And she said, I'm just really scared, and do you think he's in heaven? Do you think he's okay? And that really, it gripped me, because I know what it's like to want to say something to someone or to share something, and I think she felt like maybe she should have said something to him.
I don't believe that God did this. I would be in somebody's face if they said God did. God would never do this. But there comes a time when God, for lack of a better word, allows certain things.
And yet God, you know, allowed it to happen, but it wasn't his fault. It was a sinful man and man's sinful nature that allowed this whole thing to happen.
And just like one of our leaders said, it was Islam that was hijacked on September 11th.
It gave Muslim religion a bad name after September 11th. It's a peaceful religion. Like, if you study about the religion and all that, it's a peaceful religion. I mean, it doesn't tell you go kill innocent people.
There is no place for violence in Islam. And when we saw this happening on September 11th, the first thought that came to my mind came to all of our minds, was there are going to be so many innocent lives that are going to be lost in this.
And a lot of people, their lives are affected after September 11th. A lot of, like, Muslim people, they're, like, you know, scared.
Are all Muslims really terrorists? You know, should we just kick them all out of the country? You know, these are kinds of issues that are going to leave scars.
In my eyes, I think these people, they give a really bad name to Muslim religion. It's going to take a long time to, like, you know, for people to understand it's not a bad religion.
A lot of people are like, we shouldn't allow those people to come over here anymore. You know, I guess people from the Middle East and countries like over in Asia and stuff like that. But I think deep down everyone knows you can't do that. That's just totally against what America is all about.
Look at after World War II, we imprisoned every Japanese American. That left a scar. Now why did we do that? Because of fear. And why are we reacting the way we're reacting today? It's like I said before, it's because of fear.
Now every time they see like some people with that long beard, or they have a turban on their head, or they cover their face and all of a sudden they're gonna think like, he's a terrorist, or she's a terrorist.
Some people were retaliating. They were throwing rocks at the temple, Dakwadish Temple, which is on Washington Road.
Dakwadish Temple, they got like eggs, and they broke their windows in there. And I know, didn't they on spray Washington paint Road, something they put kill all terrorists, and that's a Hindu temple, you know, and that's not even Muslim.
There's a mosque up on the near the mini mall on Ernston Road. Someone had spray painted the outside.
One guy in my class, he is Egyptian, half Egyptian and half Palestinian, and he has like whole family here with his cousins and all his family. And I was asking if people are picking at him, and he says everybody's picking at him.
Calls for people screaming and yelling certain slang names at the certain garages in Sayreville, the gas station attendants were being ridiculed, and some of them had rocks thrown at them.
But I know a lot of American people, I don't blame them, they're mad. They're like, you know, ticked off. I don't blame them because, you know, somebody comes into your house and attack you and you didn't do anything to anybody.
I still don't feel this should have happened. We let our guard down. This is a great country. I'm a veteran, and I don't feel this should have happened. I'm upset.
Very few kids were like, well, let's go and bomb them and do them right now. They were very rational and were thinking, you know, how can we do this without being as hateful as the terrorists were? You know, let's think of the best solution, the most rational solution. I was really impressed because the kids seemed to have more class and poise than many adults.
Whatever the United States is doing with Afghanistan, it's right. They should go over there and kill these people.
Enormous amount of kids want to go to the Army. They want to join the armed services. They want to retaliate. They want to fight for their country.
People are angry. People are upset about it. And, you know, they talk about it, and you can tell. There's a feeling in the classroom when they talk about that. You know, while not everybody had somebody that was there at the time, we've all been touched by it in some way, shape, or form.
And we're on our way home. And then, as it was happening, the place got silent. You could just tell everybody was in shock and knowing that we were going to have to be doing something soon.
I wanted revenge against the terrorists, the countries, many of the countries of the Middle East. That I felt that we had to go in and just take them out totally.
We stayed on station over near Afghanistan, and for the longest time we just flew training missions because we didn't know where we were going. We were waiting for the word to go. And people's attitudes are starting to get a little edgy. Everybody started fighting because we weren't doing anything productive yet.
We've had embassies and other buildings bombed in the past, and we really haven't retaliated. And I think this was the straw that broke the camel's back.
The very few who have distorted the image of Islam, they are the culprits. They are our culprits as well as your culprits. And we want them captured, and we want them held responsible, and we want justice to be done with them.
And once it was our turn to go, it felt great. It's like we're the first ones. We're out there on the front line. You know, a couple months ago, we were sitting in London, relaxing, watching TV and drinking a beer. And we'd have thought we were fighting a war a couple months later.
It is amazing to me. I just say this simply, that we are at war. And we are at war to me as my father and my mother. My mother was working in quit her job as a teacher and went to work in the airplane factories and everything. We're at war like the country was at war back then. And that's an awesome concept.
If you're fighting terrorism, you got to get every single person. You got to do as big a job as you can. And it's not just bombing Japan back or going to Germany and taking out Hitler or whatever. This is something bigger than we've ever known.
Perhaps we in Sayreville are lucky that we don't live in the city because perhaps we're not a target as people in the city might be, or buildings. But there is a concern that something could happen here.
But people kind of are waiting for another shoe to drop, and then we're going to have to start in again. And I think that's the panic you see in the subconscious of people. They're just kind of waiting for something to happen, and then, okay, we can breathe a sigh of relief now because it's done with. But I don't know if it's really going to be done with for a long time.
the feelings that I had as unbelief. And I wish it had never happened, but it has, and it will probably change the world, you know, for a very long time.
There's a loss of innocence about being an American, about feeling comforted and comfortable in one's country, about feeling comfortable in one's environment.
She's afraid to me basically to go to places with a lot of people because she's afraid it might be a target. And so I know my mom's really scared, and that's kind of preventing me from doing stuff that I want to do, but I guess I can understand where she's coming from.
I think the good thing is that kids just pick up. It's a wonderful thing. They just pick up and continue their lives. Hopefully a little smarter, hopefully a little more sensitive to other people.
I hate to use the word enriching in this respect, but in that it has brought us, it has increased our awareness of our mortality and of our place in the world.
I know a lot of people from my generation and stuff that I don't think they really understood, you know, being patriotic, like people from the generations that went through Vietnam and the wars before that, especially the world wars. You know, everyone was just, they just didn't understand because they never went through it. And after this happened, I think people understood more.
This generation has never seen the likes of a war. And it's amazing how something so devastating can bring a country together.
The terrorists took the towers, they took, you know, they killed people, they took the towers, they took our planes, but yet the following day you heard the patriotism, you heard the Star-Spangled Banner, you heard God Bless America, and people were really going about their lives, although visibly shaken. They were not going to let this down, they were not going to let this stop them, and that, I think, is the true strength in America. And if there's anything good that's come out of this, it's reinforced that strength in America, that belief that we are one nation under God, indivisible.
It's a shame that such a tragic event had to happen for everyone to be so proud of their country and care about their country's well-being. But I guess it could be a good thing, like in the long run.
The unity that you see with the flags is beyond belief. But what did it take to get us that way? Usually a war or a tragedy. Why can't we just get along like that all the time? You know, and drop our petty issues and get and just realize what do we have in common? What do we have that we can agree on, instead of focusing on what we disagree on?
And I think we all of us, not only those of us in education, have a responsibility to make sure that something like this never happens again. And that's not only limited, obviously, to the United States. It's something that we, as leaders in our towns, in our states, in our countries, and in our nations, throughout the world, have to make sure doesn't repeat itself in the United States or anywhere else.
Everybody's got a piece, and I think everybody here knows somebody who is affected.
This happened 40 minutes from my home. This is not far away. So people, I think, when they're not in the direct geographic location, have no idea what we're living under here.
My mom's best friend growing up has died. He was a firefighter, and he was saving lives, and we don't really know what happened to him.
The difficult thing is knowing that there are people that, have lost people that are really close to them, and if I were to lose my girls or they were to lose me, that hurts.
I wish I could make everybody who's been involved with this feel better, and I can't.
With my dad working there, and we live near New York, it's just left a mark on me, saying that I've been there and I've known what's happened, and it's left a scar on me.
It's been hitting a lot of people really hard, and right now I think a lot of people think that this is a nightmare, a bad nightmare, and we're not waking up yet, but it's reality.
I wish it had never happened, but it has, and it will probably change the world, for a very long time.
for the door to open. I close my eyes one more time. I think, I hope, I close